Greetings of peace, everyone. My name is Shantanu, and I am very happy to welcome you all here today for the launch of the Youth Council. And before I begin, I would request all of us to just take a moment of silence and reflect on what all good things we are going to discover. Just a moment of silence, and then we'll begin.
Renew.
Huh? No, renew also. Also.
Thank you, dear friends, for taking this time and joining your power of silence into the silence of the group. I am very hopeful that today we'll be discovering some new ideas and recommendations as we move on towards starting a new, I would say, adventure, because every action that we are taking, if we are happy and if we are very enjoying that initiative, it becomes very sustainable. So today we have many young leaders amongst us who are from different faith backgrounds, who are leaders in their own capacity, and who have been able to mobilize a lot of massive youth potential who are standing behind them. I know you represent a lot of them today here. So not taking too much of the time, I would now request all our friends to be very active throughout the session. And now I would like to invite Nicholas and Alphonse, who would be presenting us a nice little presentation on what they think is the role of faith-based young actors in terms of climate action or environmental action. So Nicholas and Alphonse, the floor is for you.
Thank you very much, Shantanu, and it's a very delightful moment for myself to see all these young actors in environmental action and to see us gathered today here as young people, but also not just young people, but young people of faith, because there is a lot in being a young person, but more in being a young person of faith. And that is what, together with my colleague Alphonse, will be sharing on shortly. I don't know if Alphonse wants to greet people if I put our presentation up.
Thank you. Thank you so much, my colleague Nicholas, for this opportunity to introduce myself. So I am Alphonse Muya. I am part of an organization that is called Catholic Youth Network for Environmental Sustainability in Africa. And I serve against Shantanu as the Faith and Environment Thematic Facilitator within the Space of Children and Youth Major Group of UNEP, which is basically the formal youth engagement mechanism to UNEP. Thank you so much. Please go ahead, Nicholas.
Thank you, Alphonse. Alphonse is doing a lot, as he's just mentioned. Yeah, so I'm here as a young person from the Anglican Church. I represent young voices from the Anglican Church, which is a Christian denomination representing about 85 million people across 165 countries. So in the Anglican Church, we've got what we call Anglican Communion Youth Network, and we've got an environmental platform that just inspires young people in environmental action. So here we just have a very simple task of trying to reflect what is the value of the youth of faith in this particular theme. And one of the things we say is that religion influences many environmentally relevant behaviors, because we are acknowledging that there is a lot to behavior that informs what we experience with our environment. And so understanding the role of religion or of faith, and mostly I'll be talking about faith, understanding the role of faith is then key to tackling environmental challenges that are both transnational and transgenerational, because in this space today, young people are more in the front line, and also the voices of young people are coming up because environmental issues are transgenerational. But again, that we need, they cross boundaries. so they are transnational. And so the triple planetary crisis of the climate, nature, and pollution that we are talking about, especially in this strategic period by UNEP, putting these three as the main pressing environmental issues, are anthropogenic in nature. All this pollution we're talking about, all the loss in biodiversity, all the climate change we're talking about is hugely due to human activity. And so they require cultural and spiritual transformation. And that's really where our role is unique as people of faith, and especially as young people of faith. Because for the cultural and spiritual transformation to happen, then there must be somebody or some group of people who will be able to bring that consciousness to the rest of the people. Even as we have discussions in the UN systems, I mean, the UN system and everybody who participates in this system acknowledge that these are science and policy organizations. So mostly it's the evidence that comes from science that informs policy. But the people of faith, you're bringing that unique understanding of the spirituality. And so young people of faith are better placed in values because we've got a value base and we've got also time. So we've got values and time to play a key role in transformation of these attitudes and cultures. So as people of faith, I think as we all respond by different scientific-based responses, people of faith will uniquely respond in terms of transformation of attitudes and of cultures and of worldviews that are more extractive, because the way the utilitarian approach that we've had to nature, that we are all obsessed with what can nature give us, but not what is our responsibility in stewarding nature. And I think that then becomes the critical role of the people of faith. What is our responsibility in the stewardship of nature? Not just what can we extract from it. So young people then have got the leading role in promoting worldviews of interconnectedness. You have to appreciate that humans are interconnected with the rest of nature. Interdependence, that a tree can survive without a human being, but human beings really need a lot of trees around them to have clean air and to just have ecosystem services. So that worldview of interconnectedness is one thing that people of faith would then need to promote. And a relationship with the web of life. We call it web of life because humans are part of that web of life. So it's not just us against nature, but the relationship that happens within that web of life. And majority of populations in the worst affected regions, as we observe today in globe, by climate change, are people of faith. If you come to Africa or to sub-Saharan Africa, whether you are in the east or in I mean, usually people who associate with faith, and that then faith groups are strategic stakeholders in response to environmental challenges. Youth of faith also have access and goodwill of religious leaders, or of faith leaders. So the youth of faith, because we've got goodwill from the leaders, from the different faith institutions and traditions we're talking about, it then gives us a platform to not only engage, but also gives us a unique deep access and presence in the local communities. So when we talk about local actions, faith or youth, groups of faith then have got that access to the deepest parts of the societies we're talking about. But again, in terms of the engagement of young people of faith in environmental actions, and I think this is an area that the survey that we also had shared will talk to a lot, but just a few things that we put up is environmental education, that there is need to educate children and young people on various age groups about climate change and environmental challenges that we are facing today, and be able to link them to their spirituality or spiritual beliefs. It will increase awareness and spur environmental action in our local communities. But again, there is need for capacity building for advocacy, because as we ask or promote youth voices in the different spaces of decision making, there is need for requisite capacity for young people to feel well prepared to engage, especially with the decision makers. And that would happen at national, regional, global platforms. But also there is need to build movements From small acts to major movements, we believe that everyone can do their part to address environmental challenges. And the youth of faith, using the different structures of the faith institutions, we can build movements that will come from the local communities, build national movements, regional movements, and global movements. And we also need inspiration so that we've got a level, an interaction, a space to interact and inspire each other. Know what is happening in India. Let somebody in the Pacific understand what is happening in, and then all this inspires young people to act. I want to welcome Alphonse just to take us through the last slide to look at what then will be the roadmap for faith communities towards an economy of life and ecological justice. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Nicholas. I think it's too much to talk about when we think about the roadmap for faith communities towards an economy of life and ecological justice. But allow me just summarize it in a minute. Building from such a very wonderful presentation from my colleague Nicholas, I think we can change the way we deal with economy and our ecological surroundings. I mean, informed by faith traditions, and this, can be grounded in many areas. Just to mention a few of them. One being like forming spirituality that upholds sanctity of creation. And I think every other faith tradition as regard to this, not even one faith tradition that disregards care for creation and care for surrounding and nature generally. So also use and promotion of renewable energy is something that we can talk about going forward. Ecological restoration and protection as well, just and sustainable consumption, what we call, sustainable production and consumption. I think Nicholas talked about it quite a lot comprehensively in his example of using nature as the concept of life and networking as well, and ensuring that we uphold sustainable food systems and embracing and establishing circular economies, because it has been well discussed here in the fifth resumed session of UNEA, and in a particular cluster that was handling the green recovery and circular economy. It's a rare chance we have right now, just building up from COVID, and we have this chance to build circular economy. And as Nicholas said, basing our argument from a faith footing, then we are people who are supposed, to lead the way, especially with the base of young people. So thank you so much, Shantan, for that. I think I took 1 minute as I promised, so we can take it away. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Alphonse, and thank you, Shantan.
Thank you, Alphonse. Thank you, Nicholas, for taking us through an important aspect of knowing ourselves. Where do we position ourselves and how do we go about from here? Also, something to carry from what you were sharing, I realized that the young people, whether they are part of a faith-based organization or any organizations, are the driving motivation, the driving force, basically the fuel to run the system. And as faith-based organizations, as we all know, we are there around 80% of the population of Earth. So we, young people of faith, have a real big chance here to turn the tides. And so what vision does people have for us? What is the vision of the world for the youth? Let us hear from Dr. Iyad Abumogli, who was and is the real inspiration behind this council. And Dr. Iyad, the floor is for you to inspire us and enlighten us about the Youth Council.
Thank you, Shantano. Thank you, Alphonse. Thank you, Stephen. Thank you, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everybody. It's quite an ecstatic day for me, seeing Faith for Earth being recognized at the highest authority meeting today. Professor Sharmakhar was fantastic in mentioning how important it is, and the young lady who talked about what she learned actually from Faith for Earth, in addition to the triple planetary crisis, she mentioned the a triple ethical crisis, which is apathy, selfishness, and greed. And that is very important. And thank you for presenting actually your own thinking about the role of young people in taking this forward and being an inspirational tool to more moving towards more living in harmony with nature and respecting the creation that we have been given as a gift of God. So I wouldn't talk much about the things that you have. I will share a presentation. Please let me know if you see it.
Yes.
And we'll get into the real work in terms of establishing the coalition. Can anybody, because I can't see that I am presenting or not.
Yes, I can see your PowerPoint, but it's not full screen.
So, right, so the Faith for Earth Coalition and the Youth Council. Now, let's talk about the coalition itself. What we have been working over the past 2.5 years, actually, with many members and many partners, including member states, stakeholders, and people of faith, in establishing the Faith for Earth Coalition. And last week, we have discussed one of them, which is the Religion Science Consortium, and the members of that group have started thinking about, the structure of the consortium. And I have been discussing the Council of Eminent Faith Leaders with a number of member states and number of eminent faith leaders. The Youth Council today is an important element of the coalition. So the coalition is 4 councils: the Eminent Faith Leader, the Youth Council, the network of FBOs, and the Religion and Science Consortium. So what is the purpose of that? Is to facilitate the global dialogue. And you saw over the past 2 weeks, we had today 700 registered participants in our Faith for Earth dialogue. And this has never happened before. Even in any other conference, to have 700 people of dedicated people joining and discussing issues of religion and environment. Now, what the whole aspect of it is to engage in policy dialogue. You saw that in UNIA, it was mentioned, in the MTS midterm strategy, it was included, in the celebration of UNEP plus 50 or at 50 is included. Now we have been invited to be a major part in Stockholm plus 50. So all of that is, policy fora for all of you to contribute. And we wanted to mobilize the voices at all levels. Now, as you have seen, there are four councils. We are not establishing them in isolation. There's a mechanism that we have put in place to allow the interaction between these councils. Of course, the scientists, the scholars would provide the scientific evidence to the eminent faith leaders. The eminent faith leaders would provide the wisdom, the theology behind their religions. Young people would learn from the wisdom of the elders, but also will contribute their enthusiasm and their actual implementation and work at the local level. And of course, the FBOs would be supporting and have implementing projects on the ground. So this is the different councils and what they bring into the table. Now, there are certain principles that we need all to uphold to, which are the principles of the Faith for Earth Coalition. Of course, we committed to leave no one behind, and this is exactly it, reaching to the vulnerable, disadvantaged, and even to everybody on the globe. We have to believe in human rights and the rights of everybody in their beliefs, in their religions, in their values. We all work towards achieving the Sustainable Development Goals and getting to a new development paradigms. We build bridges between the existing knowledge, the traditional knowledge, and the experiences of the people, and it's a transformational movement towards changing the patterns of consumption and production and attitudes and behaviors of the people.
Dr.
Now,
Iyad,
the Youth Council,
sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
I'm afraid your slides aren't moving on for the rest of us. Could you just check to see whether there's a fault in that?
I don't know.
They're too good for us all to miss.
Where are you at now? I am at the Youth Council slide.
You can also see the Youth Council
Can
slide.
anybody tell me what you see?
The Youth Council slide.
Youth Council slides. Youth Council slides.
Okay, so the Youth Council, of course, there are different definitions of young people. Some organizations between 9 and 25, others between 15 and 30. So this is not a big deal. We have adopted 15 and 30, but of course, I mean, we are open to suggestions. We want to actively engage young people in the environmental issues, as was mentioned by colleagues. We want to reach and empower female and women young leaders to be with us. So we have set a target to have 50% a gender ratio. Definitely we need to uphold the principles of leaving no one behind and other principles. So this is part and parcel of the structure of the global Faith for Earth Youth Council. Now, okay, so what are the objectives? The objectives is to ensure interconnectedness between and among people. So we need to reach out with the enthusiasm, with the technological advancement of young people in social media and other media. We want to use that power to reach and change the attitudes of the people by bringing them back to their values. We want to be agents of change. If it is not happening at the leadership level, we need to have it at the young leadership level. We want to establish social leadership. Young people are leading social movements, so that is important to engage in. And of course, we don't want to be isolated, so we want the young faith leaders to be engaged and contribute to the other councils, whether being themselves scientists or whether being themselves CEOs of faith-based organizations. We do have young people who are already CEOs, so we want to have that interconnection between all the councils. Now, it is important that we talk about intergenerational, and this is exactly why we're putting the two councils of eminent faith leaders and the Youth Council to bridge the gap between the generations, and of course being gender responsive. One of the main aspects of the Youth Council is to promote innovation within the council members. We will be holding, hopefully, innovation labs, bringing innovative ideas like the Innovation Expo that we had last week. We had several of bright innovations that contribute to, serving people of youth, but also coming up from people of faith as well. Now, as was mentioned earlier, where do we serve as youth and as council? It is education, capacity building, information sharing, connecting the science and religion, political declaration, supporting the resilience and adaptation of people, and many other areas of importance that you can contribute to. Now, what do we need to do now? We need to start soliciting memberships from young people who are interested to become members. We need to assign committees or councils at different levels until we have a structure where we can have elections, so people themselves or council members themselves can elect their representatives at the national level, regional level, and global level, and so on. We need to put the structure and rules of procedure. How do we communicate? Who has the right to speak? Who has the right to communicate and interact, and so on? We need a plan of action, and we need to start the advocacy campaign. Now, of course, that needs to be done at 3 different levels. We need to establish national young or youth councils, like the example we had from the UK last week, presenting their ideas and taking it forward and agreeing to meet later in a week or so. Creating these national councils, hopefully in 193 countries, will correspond to regional councils, where the agglomeration of national councils in that region would lead to the global youth council having the impact and interaction with the entire policy mechanism and machinery that is available to us. So this is only a brief of my vision and what I would expect after today happening in setting up the system and taking it forward. So thank you very much for listening, and I look forward to working with each and every one of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Iyad. I mean, I could see that big, enormous picture that you have in your mind, and the passion in which you are sharing it with us. I think age is just not a factor when it comes to enthusiasm, and you are one of us. So welcome to the Youth Gang, I would say. Thank you so much, Dr. Iyad, for the presentation. And I'm sure later after this meeting, we would share the presentation with everyone so that you can go through it and also let it sink in yourself and talk to your peers and come up more strongly with your ideas. And now it's time to share with all of you what we have been doing the past few days. Survey that we have started circulating. Carrick, the floor is for you.
Many thanks, Shantanu, and warm greetings from the west coast of the United States. It's a real pleasure to be with all of you today. I'm going to go ahead and share with you the screen. Is it that you can all see this now? Excellent. And so as Shantanu shared, we've had the opportunity over the past week to circulate a survey with young faith leaders in order to understand a bit more what the role of the Youth Council could play and what are the priorities for action and strategies, engagement and resources that young people see in order to champion environmental sustainability and sustainable development in their communities and among their faith and religious practices. My name is Carrick. I'm a project manager with World Resource Institute's Faith and Sustainability Initiative. Very briefly, for those of you who don't know, WRI is a global nonprofit organization working with government, businesses, civil society to improve people's lives and ensure that nature can thrive. Our work exists across over 50 countries, 7 main concentrations, split within 4 different centers, and our work within faith and sustainability specifically focuses around research, sustainable action, and advocacy and mobilization. And so in this sort of research component, we've had the opportunity, as I mentioned, and as Shantanu alluded to have a survey circulated, which we have received over 200 responses so far. And I'm excited to share with you very briefly today some of the initial findings that we have from that survey. First, I wanted to share that the respondents have been quite representative already of the young people of faith worldwide. That includes 50% women, 22% Indigenous people, 48% coming from countries in the global South, and 38% of respondents under age 20. And we also have representation from 10 different faith and religious practices. The survey was intended in order to work both on understanding of issues of environmental and climate change, the priorities that young people see within their local communities, the role of faith in motivating change and action, and also the resources needed to build capacity. And so some of the first results that we're seeing that I'm very excited to share with you all today, the first being the primary motivations for young people's commitment to the environment. You see here, majority concern for future generations, next, connection with nature, and finally, and very importantly, their faith, religion, or spiritual practice. We see that you see climate change and environmental issues as a whole as being more important to them than the issues of environment are to their faith communities, which is an opportunity for young people within their faith communities to bring topics of environmental sustainability to that faith group. We also saw that more than half of respondents have a story from their religious or spiritual wisdom, scripture, holy text that it motivates or speaks to the importance of environmental sustainability. And we also saw that the primary ways that young people are learning about and engaging environmental issues are social media, as well as web maps and apps for things like news, radio stations, etc. When we asked what the most important solutions for combating climate change and promoting environmental sustainability were, we saw that the highest responses were investing in green energy and green jobs. Next was teaching sustainability through education. And finally, was using faith as a mechanism or a leverage point in order to engage on these issues. After we asked what role we saw people saw for themselves and their
that opportunity.
and their
Alphonse Maria, who we've been in touch for a while.
Thanks. We asked what role we saw for young people and their faith communities in promoting solutions to climate change and ecological crisis. You see the responses being encouraging individuals, that 81% that we alluded to make more sustainable choices. The next is advocating for more sustainable government policies. The final, encouraging recycling. And finally, we asked what resources that you and your faith community would need in order to take action for sustainable development. And the main responses were educational resources for teaching members how to live more sustainable lives. And the other was greater opportunities for collaboration between faith communities and decision makers such as governments, nonprofits, and private sector. Many things that we saw in Shantanu's presentation, as well as in the Iyad's presentation, could be brought by Faith for Earth Coalition, as well as the Youth Council. So I invite you all to continue sharing this survey. We hope to have even more than the 214 responses that informed today's presentation, and very welcome to contact me and our team at World Resources Institute, as we're excited to be a partner in this work.
Thank you, Karek, for the wonderful presentation. And it was just a little thought that came to us when we were discussing that let's first know the team that we are supposed to connect with. And this survey is a brilliant way to connect and to know about our treasure bank. In the chat box, Asmira has already posted the link for the survey. In case if you haven't taken it, or if you have taken it but you would like to share it amongst your circles, please use the link and share it as wide as possible. Now I would like to invite 5 of our leaders present here who took the opportunity of a very short time to go back in their organizations, do a consultation, and bring back some very brief recommendations. So I would start with Anish. Please go ahead and take this 1.5 minutes to share what recommendations you have got from your circle of work.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for inviting me, Shantanu. I'll make mine very quickly. Just have to follow on from what's already been said by the majority of speakers here. It's so important that faith voices are heard in today's world, perspectives are considered, and there's an avenue to share all these important contributions from communities across the world with policymaking bodies. And as I was said earlier, science has been a key driver for policymaking, but we need to align spirituality into that, because they both tie towards the environment. And we need to shift away from this emphasis on science and also have a synergistic input from both spirituality and science to provide that instrumental change for the environment. And I think this dialogue is such a fantastic opportunity to highlight the major checkpoints Faith for the Earth has made towards advocacy, towards the environment, and also address some of the challenges that we still face. And I think in terms of next steps, just to create stronger communities with sustainability at its core.
Thank you, Anish. So I take from your observation that we would like to create more stronger communities with sustainable livelihood around. And next we'll go to Edda. So Edda, you have the floor.
Hello, everyone. Delighted to be here today. I'm the coordinator of the Religions for Peace United Kingdom Interfaith Youth Network, and today I will be speaking on behalf of our steering committee members, Finn Pierrau, Lucy Plummer, Jessica Hazrati, and Nicole Travnicek. As a member of the Youth Council of the Faith for Earth Coalition, in terms of the next steps, our idea would be to work on initiatives based on the idea of the global commons, understanding our planet not only in terms of what it provides for us, but doing so in a way that puts less value on ownership, but more on distribution. Our action would be working to establish a framework to safeguard the global commons on a global level, transcending national sovereignty. Besides what we receive from Earth, we must talk about what we can give to Earth. Action must be the priority, basically. The Youth Council should be diverse as possible and should have rotating posts to give as many people as practically possible to participate. The Youth Council should provide opportunities to engage in global action as well as in global intergenerational dialogue. And also buddying system that connects groups across the globe, youth from global north and global south paired together in a buddy system. These pairs meet regularly to discuss activities from different perspectives and discuss how action can be taken to work together, as well as building an alliance of humanity led by the faith community and opportunities to youth to have talks with faith leaders eye to eye and respectful conversation beyond fixed hierarchies to establish further and bring positive future dealing with the environmental issues. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Edda. I mean, this is brilliant that in just a minute or so, you brought so many important points, and that shows what the power of youth can really achieve. I especially like the idea of having a buddy system on a rotation basis. Very brilliant ideas. Thank you for bringing them onto the floor. Next to Natalia.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here with all of you. Thank you, Shantanu, for the invite, and I really appreciate the concrete vision that you've just I'm a Rotary Peace Fellow calling in from Bosnia right now, and I've organized with my peers the Balkan Youth Environmental Assembly in the lead up to UNEA 5. So in our declaration, we state that as young people in the Balkans, we see the biological diversity of the existing ecosystems and the way they have and continue to inform traditional ecological knowledge and cultural heritage as integral to our well-being. We state that we're all vested in the collective well-being of human and non-human life in the region. It was very important to understand ourselves as being part of it and being dependent on an infinitely elaborate ecosystem. And that phrasing of ourselves as being part of life and contributing to life was a big part of how we frame the rest of our advocacy about moving away from fossil fuels and building a healthier and brighter future for all within the natural bounds of the planet's ecosystems. And I guess I would just share that personally, from my own faith tradition, there's an aspect of seeing on earth as it is in heaven, and so very much trying to create a place that's livable for all.
Thank you, Natalia, for that beautiful vision. A place where everybody is equal and everybody is living in harmony. And with that, I would move on to Bernd. So,
yeah, hi all together. I'm representing FIMCAP, the Union of Catholic Parochial Youth Movements. And I want to highlight two recommendations from our consultations. The first is the new Youth Council should not only advocate for behavioral change at the individual level, but work for comprehensive, fast structural change. This is particularly important so that marginalized groups and poorer countries are not left even further behind. The Council, with the help of youth organizations worldwide, could become a focal point together from all parts of the world, reports about what prevents young people from living a sustainable life. At the same time, ideas should be collected from young people on how to overcome these barriers. The implementation of such concepts should be promoted after scientific consultation at the highest level, for instance, at the UN climate conferences. Another important point I want to raise is that we must not think of climate policy in isolation in the new council. In Europe, for example, the Russian regime's shameless attack on Ukraine in the recent days, which is also an attack on the democracy, freedom, and values of all of us here in Europe and on international law, has made us realize that climate policy, for example, is in fact also security policy. It is not for no reason that the Sustainable Development Goals have taken up an idea that has long been of great importance, especially in different religions. The various spheres of human life, nature, and development are interwoven and cannot be separated. From the Catholic perspective, I'm thinking, for instance, about the encyclical Laudato Si. For this reason, we think that we should also think all of these dimensions together in the new Youth Council. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bernd. All the 2 points that you kind of summarized your consultation, they are very important, especially the one where it's not just about personal change, but also structural change. Thank you so much for bringing that in, and I'm sure you would help us in moving into that direction as well. Lastly, I would go to Lela. So the floor is for you to share your recommendations.
Thank you very much. Greetings of peace, everyone. I'm Leila, today here on behalf of United Religion Initiative, which is one of the biggest interfaith grassroots level organizations. So it is my great pleasure to share some of the ideas or thoughts that come in our consultations that we have with youth people from United Religion Initiative. So some of them are technical nature in terms that we would like to know how this youth council can strive to be as inclusive as possible, taking into consideration that not all of people are speaking English language. So I think that we should take care about translation to another languages, and also to take care of those who are unfortunately not having access to the technology as we are having today, so that are not having access to the Zoom or other platforms, how we can achieve, how we can reach all of them, because when it comes to the climate crisis, we need as many experienced representatives as possible from all over the world. Secondly, the Youth Council will only meet once yearly, as it is stated in one of the documents that we received. So we are wondering what will be happening in between. Can we form some bodies or teams that will work on different topics that will be reached, so that we have continuity of activities that will be happening. The Youth Council also collaborating on trainings possibility will be very important. And we know that there is already some things happening in terms of this, but we are wondering, can this Youth Council be an overreaching umbrella for these kind of programs, that they can bring it all together and offer to the young people and organization that they would like to expand their knowledge on the topic of environmental issues, and what council can do for young people so that they can engage with religious leaders in their communities and other bodies like governmental and non-governmental organizations as well. And lastly, from a climate action and biodiversity perspective, this loss unfortunately is happening, and we want to emphasize that climate change is already here. And even if some countries and companies are taking significant actions right now, life on Earth is going to get much worse before it begins to heal. So we thought that Council should support the next generation emotionally and logistically as they continue to process what lies ahead, and also what is already mentioned in terms of current crisis in Ukraine and all this nuclear threat that is happening. Our proposal is that we should act right now, and that, for example, one of the outcome of today's meeting can be statement that can be shared about threat of the nuclear action that is happening in Ukraine and Russia, because it is, as Bernd said, it is threatening not just democracy, but also climate and security of all of us. So thank you once again.
Thank you, Lela, for bringing so many points. And one of the very crucial ones is this language barrier that stops people from communicating freely. And we should definitely look into that when we move ahead. Coming on to your second point, that should we meet annually once? Let us just decide here right now that can we all, whoever is present here, meet in next 2 weeks so that we can see what we have done in these 2 weeks, what has been our actions, and are we coming back again with some great ideas. So if you are ready to come back in next 2 weeks to meet, please show a sign of thumbs up. So I could see many people showing their thumbs up. Very good. Great. So let's just take this activity to another level and do an official launch of the Youth Council. What I would request you is to just for maybe few seconds, open your camera, and we will take a screenshot where with your camera open, you have to create a sign of heart, because anything that we do with heart is sustainable. So let's create a heart like this, and Hannah would take the screenshot. So make sure your heart is with everybody's heart here. Hannah, just let us know when you have taken it.
It's amazing.
Okay, I have 3 pages to take, so I took 1, 2, 1 more. Please, everyone, turn on your cameras if you can.
Nice to see so many hearts.
Awesome, thanks, guys.
Thank you so much. So you can clap amongst your side for lightening the spirit of this council launch. Yes, and Dr. Iyad is doing the lightning clap of Nairobi, very famous one. Thank you so much. So now with this, we will move on to a very important phase of this meeting where we'll break out ourselves into 3 working groups. And I think Azmaira or maybe Alison would put the 2 questions that the 3 working groups will take into consideration in your 20 minutes of consultation now. So the idea is when you come back from this breakout group, you come back with very powerful recommendations that would help us shape the Youth Council. As we already mentioned that the Youth Council is not written on rock. It is for us to create right now, shape it the way we want. So please take these 2 questions into the breakout groups and actively engage and come back with great recommendations. So the first question is, what are the key topics for Youth Council's work plan? These questions will put it on the chat for you also in the breakout groups, but you can still write it down so that it is there. What are the key topics for the Youth Council work plan? And the question number 2 is, what structure would you like the Youth Council to take at local, regional, and global level? What structure would you like the Youth Council to take at local, regional, and global level? So with that, each group would, there are 3 groups, so each group would focus on a single level. For example, group 1 would focus on the local level, group 2 would focus on the regional level, and group 3 would focus on the global level. I know you would have ideas to put in the others also, but maybe the group that is taking care of one of the groups would definitely touch on those ideas, because we are youth and we are vibrating on the same frequency. So with that belief, I would invite Alison and Azmaira to break us into little 3 groups.
Please join a breakout room. There's only 20 minutes for the discussion.
Oh, thank you, Shantanu. I'm seeing new faces that I don't know. And some people are hiding. Hi, Brian Chigame. I'm seeing Rotanang. No, it's okay. But anyway, hi, everyone. Finn, you're good?
Mm-hmm.
Are you ready to?
Excuse me?
Where are you based at?
Oh, at the moment I am in London, but I'm from Germany.
Okay.
Oh, where are you in London?
In Hackney?
I am here in Fleetham. Is it, I don't know how to pronounce, is it Fleetham? Oh, people back. Let us be in a conversation.
Okay.
So welcome back. I know many people might have left during the conversations from your groups, like from our group, few people left because they had other engagements. So I think we can just wait for another 1 minute and then we move on to the presentation. Every presenter from the 3 groups would get a 2 minutes time to present what recommendations they have collected. And then after that, I would request Dr. Iyaz to share his feedback on what recommendations he's listening, what he sees as visions. So
Shantanu,
can I?
During this minute, can we just invite anyone who may have been partway through an intervention to chat and message in the chat, or perhaps send an email so that we capture the input, because it was valuable and I don't want to lose that because of the time constraint.
Yep. So in case if you were not able to share, or if you have shared but you still want it to be captured in terms of text, please mention that in the chat so that we can record it and use it in our processes. So let me invite the group number 1, who was group number 1 and who would like to do the reporting.
Natalia?
What I could do is share in the chat also where our collective thought document is, and this is something that all of you can then see. We had a little bit of tech issues due to my computer cutting me off, but we talked a lot about the importance of intergenerational action. There were some really beautiful visions that were expressed, and I'd actually like to turn it over to some of the folks that were in the group to speak about, for instance, the local canopy and the actions on greenhouses and restorative action, for instance.
Thank you. I can quickly share elaborate on the point about the human canopy. So this was kind of an idea that, there's so much focus on, forests being carbon sinks to mitigate climate change, and the role of nature and nature-based solutions. But what actually are humans going to do to protect and safeguard? So putting the kind of onus back on our action. So this idea was to foster this network of maybe like a visual, like a human canopy across the world that would protect our global commons. Sorry, my video is not on. Yeah, so that was kind of the visual that I had to really foster these individuals and not just leave it up to, turning the onus on nature to solve it, but what can we do as humans?
Thanks, Lucy. Nice to see you again. What about anybody else from your group? Is there anyone else who would like to share something or add something? Or should we move on to group number 2?
Well, there was a really important point about intergenerational actions and bringing us back to pre-consumer societies, but I'd like to also give that person the opportunity to speak if they would want to the idea.
Okay, so we see nice doc there, which everybody can also look into. So this is a document from group number 1. And now I would go to group number 2, where I think Finn is going to present the recommendations, ideas, and the observations. Finn, the floor is for you to share.
Thank you, Shantanu. Thank you. We were also talking about intergenerational dialogue, and particularly Anish highlighted the work of EcoSeek, which who do tree plantings, and they focus on in-person action. For example, they have in-person events where they hand out food and then discuss environmental action. That seemed like a very good idea to go beyond just webinars. We were also, Rasta was also talking about maybe the importance of schools and education. For example, we could teach young people about environmental matters and connect that with grassroots movements. That sounded like a very good idea. And then Leanne was highlighting generally that the need for a unified campaign. So I'm not quite sure if Leanne wants to elaborate on that, whether that was on the local, regional or global level, but the focus there definitely needs to be on action and raise awareness.
I can add to that. So the campaign will be
You're on mute, Leanne.
Yeah, I would like to add to that. So it's basically all three levels, local, regional, and global, doing the same thing, and then we can share our experiences and the outcomes and the challenges faced. So something on recycling or something on green campuses, such kind of campaigns.
Thank you. I can see how that connects to school also. And then for the second question, the most important point that came from it was the unique challenges that each country face. So at the regional level, it will be very important to make sure we don't lose that diversity. So for example, we suggested there to be a regional coordinator who's in constant touch with the local movements and the local groups, so that we can keep these nuances, which will be very important to listen to. Yeah, so I think that was everything from us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Finn. Perfect timing. Let's move on to group number 3, and who's going to present?
Keegan, please go ahead.
Thank you, Carrick. So for the group number 3, we really went across a variety of span of issues. One of the ways that we found that the global part could really help and work with one another is by working with other intergovernmental organizations such as the AU and the EU as part of the global youth work. Also looking to establish a readiness fund to respond to emerging environmental issues, and really making sure that there is a truly innovative leadership program for young people, and that young people can have the opportunities to learn from one another as this work continues to grow and flourish throughout the coming years. We've also briefly touched on the importance of intergenerational work and holding conversations around that as well. And then we also mentioned the idea to have representatives from regional groups in order to make sure that the global part of this work truly is global and that all communities are equally represented. There was also, in that same vein, there was also a discussion about having at least one representative from every nation or from something similar to that point. So that way a variety of perspectives are shared and understood as we continue throughout this work.
Thank you so much, Keegan. And is there anybody else who would like to add something from group 3? Well, as I saw in the past few weeks, when I see no objection, it's passed. So, so I know Keegan must have taken very good notes, and everybody must have just been very absorbed in the notes. So thank you so much for sharing all the 3 groups, what your observations, recommendations, and ideas were regarding the Youth Council. Dr. Iyad, what do you see, and what are your inspirations now?
Well, thank you very much, everybody. This is really inspiring. As I have been thinking about this for 2 years, and you have in 15 minutes summarized it. Wonderful. I very much agree with everything that has been said. It is important that we bridge the, I wouldn't call it the gap, but the understanding between the young generation and the old generation. And it's very important because the young generation will be the old generation in the future. So we need the wisdom, the tradition, and we're talking about religions and faiths that have existed for centuries. So we need to move on and carry and innovate and progress in that tradition. So it's important, the intergenerational aspect of it. Definitely the priority areas will need to resonate with the international important areas that have been or are being discussed at the international level. So while having the wisdom of the young people and their ability to identify trending areas or areas emerging, we would of course need to connect to the existing priority areas. For example, the decade of ecosystem restoration is one area where the entire international community will be geared towards in the next 10 years, the biodiversity agenda, the climate change. So these are given priorities. However, I see that young people can bring in some aspects into these priority areas. Again, if we are part of the UN system and UNEP in specific, we need to correspond to the priority areas being identified by member states of UNEP and UNIA in carrying out their sessions. For example, this year it was on the nature-based solutions. In 2 years, it would be, I think, one planet, something like that. So we need to be mindful of these priority areas. So while we encompass these priority areas, we can feed into other areas that are of concern. For example, education, as you mentioned, it is very important. It's a highly needed area of priority for young people to engage. First, to educate themselves in the relationship between religions and environment, but also educate the communities that they are serving. And this is where you can have an impact by making people aware of the tools that these are in their hands to change behavior, to really contribute to effective environmental action. And on that, again, I agree, we don't want only webinars or seminars or just meeting on Zoom or whatever. We need actions on the ground, and these actions on the ground will be captured by the national councils, the regional councils, and the global councils as lessons learned, as best practices, and conveyed back between, in a south-south, south-north cooperation and coordination. Indeed, one important factor is a unified system of campaigns. That does not mean that if you have at the national level a campaign that you would want and you see its priority in that country, that doesn't happen. On the contrary, that is encouraged. But again, as I mentioned, UNEP and other UN organizations come up with strategic approaches, like, for example, the decade of ecosystem restoration. We have very nicely structured system that we can all at the global, regional, and national level work through and contribute to achieving the goals of that campaign. Working with intergovernmental organizations is important. We have been trying to do so. We have had one successful endeavor with the Islamic Council, where 57 Islamic countries adopted a Faith for Earth strategy in their environmental ministerial council. We have been approaching the AU and EU, so that is very important because it happens at the policy level. When we have the support from these intergovernmental organizations, then we can make sure that we are at the seat on the table of policy making. Innovation is important. We know that young people are the innovators. There are so many innovations that are out there. Those should not be innovations on a limited scale. They should be mainstreamed and become the norm, where we can, with these councils, convey this innovation from one place to the other place. Now, the final point that I would like to make, which I made to the group, is that practically, or before going to that, I'm sure that each and every one of you has excellent ideas to move forward. So please do not be mean to us and keep it to yourself. Share it with us, and we will share it again with the group. So we will compile your ideas. If you have whatever idea, whatever vision on the structure, on the the council, the national, region, whatever priorities, please share by email to my colleagues Asmaira and Hannah, and then we will compile them and send them back again. And I very much love what Shantanu mentioned, is that you need to meet in 2 weeks' time to sit down and visualize your work. Now, to practically make that happen, as I mentioned, in the first year, leading to a democratic system that is, participatory, that is inclusive of all nations, all regions, and at the global level, practically that wouldn't, we wouldn't have that happen in the first year, because who do we elect? Who elects the people who are, being nominated and so on? So in the first year, we would want to have volunteers at the national level, at the regional level, and at the global level. So volunteers to work for a year to put the system together, to solicit membership. Once we have a mass of the number of young people representing a number of countries, a number of regions, and at the global level, then we will go back to the system where we allow elections and nominations and so on. So this is from my part. I think this is very good. It's happening. I see the enthusiasm. I see the ideas that we have had are being translated by your contributions. And so we are learning from you, and we want to move together in making this happen. Thank you very much, Shanta.
Thank you, Dr. Riyad. And we are also learning from you. The amount of energy you and the team of Faith for Earth has portrayed in the past 2 weeks that I have seen on ground is amazing. So I would like to bring this meeting to a conclusion, because we just have 3 minutes, and I would bring everybody's notice that please, Asmaira has posted the email ID for Asmaira and Hannah, whom you can reach anytime and send your ideas and proposals. Secondly, there is a link for the survey that Carrick has been asking us to share widely and across, because now we have got 214 people who have taken that survey, but we would like many youths take that survey, because that survey is something that is going to be the foundation for our structure. We just don't want anybody to come and say, oh, you guys just did this because you thought this is right. We want to do it because we have collected substantial reports and data that is going to be the foundation for every step that we are taking. And the last thing that I would like to bring to everybody's notice is when Mr. President of US went to NASA, Mr. Kennedy, and he was just going by, and there was a janitor who was cleaning, he was carrying the broom, and he asked, Mr. Janitor, what are you doing? He said, oh, Mr. President, I am trying to put a man on moon. So he was a janitor, not a scientist, not a rocket scientist, not an astronaut, nothing. But he was believing that even his little contribution is making a big difference in putting a man on the moon. This is the message that I would like each one of us to carry back from today's event, that wherever we are, whatever big or small contribution we can make, let's just do it and share the idea to many of our friends, to our communities. Let's start moving the ball to them and bring them back on the second meeting, which would be 2 weeks from now. It could be on the Friday of the 18th of March, or it could be on the weekend, whichever you like. Maybe in time, we'll send you a doodle poll so that you can figure out which day suits you the best, and accordingly we can meet. Also, we can do 2 consultations, one for a time zone that suits most of them, and for other time zone, which would be a replica of the same meeting, but for those who cannot be part of the first time zone meeting. Having said that, we are just on time. Let's take a few seconds of silence again to let all these good memories sink in and share good wishes to one another. Greetings of peace. As they say in Kenya, asante sana. Thank you.